Good. Now, okay, the reason I wanted to bring you in is because we brought in some of your fibers into the shop, and you and I met at Fiber Week a few months back. James and I set up a booth, and March. So tell me about that. What do you got going on?
Okay, so that was Bandera Fiber Arts Week that also has become Bandera Fiber Arts Festival because naturally there's progression. People take classes, then they want to have flies in their face.
We've got a bug
It's
zapper.
okay because that's what makes it more human. So
Yes.
if I'm doing this, you just know we're in Texas.
Yes.
The Fiber Arts Week is started out as a small retreat for people who don't live in Texas that wanted to see what I was up to, and then it progressed to the point where we needed a bigger space, and that's how you found us, is because I was actually advertising in a bigger circle. And it just gives me a chance to do something a little less like all the others, where it's truly about the artists themselves and the fiber producers, without all the hoopla that comes with a big festival.
What kind of vendors do you bring in?
Normally I try to bring in the farms and ranches first.
Okay.
And then I always make sure I have a couple of indy dyers. I actually have a formula that I follow, like 3 of this and 3 of that, and I make sure that there's not too much crossover. Sorry, if I do this, I'm a hand gesture.
No, that's okay. We've got the door open so people come in all the time, and we love customers.
So I really try to keep it simple. So like if I knew that you were making soap, unfortunately I did put you next to another soap maker, but you do different soap than she does, and then we added on 1 extra soap maker last minute because he asked me for a spot and I couldn't deny him that. But that way, you're still have your unique position. The same with the indy dyers. Quick story, I actually set my star dyer on the back of her heels because she thought I was punishing her.
Oh, no.
And I told her, no, you're going all the way to the back of the building. And then I explained to her, look, when you walk into a shop, if you put all the really good stuff up front, no one's going to go wander into the back of the building.
That's why you put us at the back.
Yeah, and her colors just pop that you can't miss her. So she knew what to do. She knew how to spread out and, get the colors really out there. So now that we've moved to a ranch, we're actually going to move it all over to the ranch. Because what we found is if we can get all the livestock in one place, we get the vendors in one place, but then you have that country experience as well, and there's places for people to sit outside. It's just a more open air event. It'll be a lot more fun than being in a standard building situation. Yeah.
Walk me through, because whenever I talked to you setting up the podcast, you had lost a sheep.
I did too.
So what's going on with the ranch?
Okay.
What is ranch life like?
So ranch life is not complicated.
Okay.
It's just that with all the rain that we had this year, there were some things that we didn't expect, new parasites that we didn't anticipate for. So no matter how much I wormed my sheep, there was something out there that I couldn't stop.
Right.
And unfortunately, one of the girls that passed came from another ranch who has a big parasite problem, whereas we don't. And they kind of brought that with them. So that's the downside. And they were wool sheep. So that's even the bigger downside, is when you lose your wool sheep, because obviously they're prettiest
I
ones.
lose wool sheep all the time.
Yes, they're the prettiest ones. It's always the prettiest girls.
So your fibers, do you bring in, do you use the sheep on your, what is that process? I don't know anything about ranch life.
Okay, so first we were on 6 acres. We started out with 3 Dorpers. Now Dorpers are just primarily meat, but I'm real optimistic. They do grow wool, so I would pull the wool off of them because that's what they do. They shed. And use that for felting. So then comes the next sheep and the next sheep and the next sheep, and I started, my next round was with heritage breeds, so I brought in long wools. And what's nice is that by bringing in different breeds, that means that my shop, for instance, doesn't have to go out and look for that wool. I can either have the purebred wool there, or I can do crosses, where then you're going to get different types of wool that have different purposes.
Is that...
I brought in, this is actually alpaca, Surrey and Wakaya. I don't raise them. I have llamas, but I have a crisscross coming next year. So my classic llamas were crisscrossed with a Surrey. So it'll be very similar to what I have here on the drop spindle.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So what is the setup at the ranch? How do you go from animal to this?
Okay, so set up at the ranches, I have a little storage room that has AC on it. So I converted my old dye shed I've insulated and converted that into the storage area. So what I do is I take all that raw fleece from shearing time, and then I get other people's raw fleece because they know that I'll take it. And then we store that, and then if I don't teach on it, it gets sorted into two piles. There's the pile that we know the staple length, which is basically the length of the lock. The work width isn't long enough for spinning, but can still be used for felting. So like this is a really good example of felting, because like the locks here, they're really short. This came off the shiny stuff, the smaller stuff here. That came from a mohair goat. The smaller bits where they're just kind of puddled are actually only maybe a fingernail's length. I mean, what, half an inch long.
How do you get it to get this shape?
Soap and water.
So, really?
Yeah. So the only thing that goes to waste on a fleece literally is the stuff that has either too much hay in it I put it out with the chickens. I give it to the birds because they love to pick at it. Right. Or anything that has, their waste on it, that you're just not going to salvage the back end of them. But so, you look at the cuts, and if it's a shorter fleece that's just, a breed that doesn't produce long wool like the Dorpers, sometimes the Suffolks, which are big breed around here, I conserve that wool for felting.
Okay.
And
what is felting, by the way?
Felting is, so this is felted. There's two variations. There's felting and then fulling. I don't actually ever get to the fulling stage where it's real smooth and tight and perfect and concise. The felting process is actually taking those locks and tangling them down with soap and water and friction. So, and you can use different things. So the packing foam has enough friction, but it doesn't biodegrade with all that movement. I've even used an exercise ball that I cut into pieces just to have, because it was there. Yeah. I use balloons. What we do is we use those chip clips to stop them so that we can recycle and reuse them over and over again. And like in this case, I used a balloon because the fiber was so feisty, and this is so feisty because it's such a short staple length. Right. Getting it to stay means you have to work twice as hard to make sure that it really glues itself together. Because as it tangles down, it becomes a fabric. This is woven, but this is felted.
So now, if somebody wanted to pick this up as a hobby,
it's easy.
What do you need like a? Where do you buy that?
Well, you would come to a place like me. Okay. So you would say, hey, Susie's Woolworks, out in the country. You want to look for a shop that sells wool or fiber. There's only a couple of us that I know that would sell in color packs the way that we do, but there's almost everybody in Texas sells fiber. Because if you're a spinner, you're going to use almost the same exact stuff.
And where are you at? Like if somebody did want to reach out to you?
I'm out in Bandera, Texas. So what you would look for is Suzu's Woolworks, and it's SUZOO', Suzu's. But we're located
drop all that
at the Sheep Walk Ranch. Good.
Anything you need, I'm putting it down in that bad boy.
And I'm not Susie. My name is Jennifer. It's okay.